Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Unstuck Kids Speak Out, episode 19. Today is going to be a special international episode. We are going to be talking with, I had the name practice and I screwed it up. It's Kaajal, and she is from India. She also created an app called Liberate, my OCD Fighter, which I'll tag here in the comments after the broadcast. We're going to talk to her about how OCD treatment was for her, how she found help, and, have a good discussion, an international discussion. I like talking to folks from other countries because it helps us really kind of show what the world is doing, not just what's happening in local or the U.S., which is most of the stuff that I see or read about. So we're going to invite Kaajal in a second, and then we'll start talking, and feel free to share this out, comment away. This is an open forum, so we're happy to answer that joins us. So she's going to join me in a second, and we're going to start talking about OCD and how kids deal with it, and kind of talk to a kid expert, if you will.
Oh, hi.
Hi there. I would say, I was about to say good morning, but I know it's good evening.
Yeah, it is.
Well, thank you for joining me so late. I really appreciate it.
It's okay. It's not that late.
OCD Kids Speak Out is a chance for me to kind of connect with teens, kids who've gone through OCD treatment and find out what their story was, and also for people who are watching to ask questions and get information. So I'd love to start off by you telling me a bit about like how OCD came into your life, like when you first started to notice signs, remember back however long ago it was, and talk a little bit about, the beginnings of how OCD was affecting you and maybe your family.
Sure. So I first noticed around when I was 13 years old, when I first started 8th grade. I saw that I was incorporating a lot of superstitions into my daily activities. And before that, I was generally quite a skeptic. So that was kind of weird for both me as well as my family. So like I avoided certain numbers, I avoided certain colors, certain thoughts, and I had to like replace that with certain good kind of things. And I noticed that in a lot of my life, including in school. And my sister and my family, they saw that there was something off, and they began to research on my symptoms. Like I also had some form of contamination OCD, in which I kept on washing my hands, and I kept on I put on lots of soap and lots of lather, and I kept on taking showers, those kinds of things. So then they realized that the symptoms matched that of OCD, and they suggested that I go to a therapist. Actually, a month before that, they suggested I actually asked to go to a therapist, but my parents were kind of skeptical towards it because generally not many people visit therapists, and it's considered to be something like a hocus pocus, and it's just a waste of money.
Right.
After some time, they took me to the therapist, and that helped me a lot.
That's so much I want to get into by what you just said. But the first thing I wanted to talk about is you said you were noticing superstitions, and, you would replace the bad thoughts with something good. Can you give an example of, okay, I had a superstition, and then what your brain was telling you how to do to kind of get that anxiety down?
Yeah, sure. So an example of that would be like a thought like death. Okay, so it particularly spiked up during nighttime, in which I was like entering rooms or something. If I thought words like death or something similar like bad, or some kind of bad word, or even a swear word, then I would think that would somehow impact some people I love. Like if I think death, and someone I love will die, and I'd have to think of another word to replace that, like life, in order to kind of neutralize that. So I had to repeat actions like that, and it kept on and on and on happening. Like I used to go in and out of like a door, or get up and get down like 10 times, or even more.
So you notice it going, it was easy to deal with at first, and then more and more you had to do either more complex things, or you had to keep repeating it over and over in order to kind of make sure you were able to do it right and get rid of the fear or anxiety that you had.
Yeah, at first it seemed kind of harmless, right? Like it seemed like it was helping me, but then it kind of escalated until I didn't even recognize what it was anymore. At first it was just like to maintain my own mental stability, kind of, and then I just don't know. It just kept on and on and on happening until it impacted my everyday life. Even in school, I was afraid of people seeing me and calling me a freak or something. And so, like, uh, at first it was only like during the nighttime, then it kind of took over my day-to-day life.
And it almost got so much so I just want to follow up. It almost got so much that you forgot that you didn't realize you were doing it. It just became part of your normal
Yeah,
everyday life.
definitely.
And
I know
so
I couldn't think of what my life was like before I had OCD. Like everything I thought of, it was like, is this a good thought or is this a bad thought? Is that kind of that like that?
and then because it was becoming so much a part of everything you were doing and almost like part of your daily routine, is that what really cued your parents and your family to say, wait a minute, something's going on here? And was there a dial where you saying, Mom, I get these fears or worries? Like, how did your family kind of get involved? And you get into the next thing you talked about initially, which is like your family going, wait a minute, we got to research this.
Yeah. So they definitely did notice that I was like spending a lot of time showering and repeating my actions, and I also kept on asking for reassurance. Right. I asked them, "Did I do this?" Just making sure that I did a certain compulsion, and like just asking them a lot of different questions repeatedly too. So that kind of cued them in, like that's not normal and something's wrong. So it was pretty easy to find because the symptoms, right? Because these symptoms are very characteristic of OCD. So my sister actually, she's like 3 years older than me, and she was also like slightly very affected by my own compulsions because it's not something which most people have seen, right? And OCD is not something that most people hear of. So she did research on it mostly, and then she told my mother about it.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. Folks, if you're watching, this is Unstuck Kids Speak Out. We get a chance to, and you get a chance to ask questions and hear a story from somebody who's had OCD, gone through some treatment, and in this case, created a whole app to help people with OCD. So feel free to throw in any questions. So your sister did the research, and your sister said, hey, what's going on here? You mentioned that she was affected. Was she involved in your rituals? Was she a trigger for you? Did you avoid her? Like, how did it affect her?
She was just like a normal person, and like almost everyone in my family was somehow involved in reassurance. And I mean, she wasn't particularly a trigger for anything. Triggers were mostly like just thoughts for me, like a lot of rumination and stuff. But like we're very close to each other, and she noticed that I kept on doing that action, like especially at night, and it really bothered her as well. Yeah.
And what were some of the things that, do you remember was that they found? Was it just like an article somewhere? Was it a book? Was it like the International OCD Foundation or OCD Action? Like, what was the first, like, Wikipedia? Like, what was the place you found your research and said, wait a minute, this sounds like me?
I'm not sure where she did her research, but I know that my mother bought a lot of books on OCD to read up on it, like Breaking Free from OCD, then The Four Steps by Jeffrey Schwartz, then a couple of other books. I didn't really do research on it because I felt like that was kind of a trigger for my yeah, it became kind of bad. And those were a trigger for my obsessive thoughts because I saw all these case studies about people with OCD who did like those compulsions like escalated out of control, and that kind of freaked me out, thinking what if I did that? So I kind of tried to avoid those books and websites, and
Mm-hmm.
my mother did almost all of the research for that purpose.
And when you finally got into therapy, was it hard to find a therapist where you live? Did you have to travel? And you mentioned there was a stigma attached to it, which I think is something, unfortunately, that is everywhere, hopefully getting a little better. But, I
Mm-hmm.
know that culturally it could have been something where you live, but how did you kind of get involved into therapy, and how did that go?
I was very open to the idea of therapy. I mean, I didn't have any kind of stigmatized thoughts or feelings against it. So that's why I had like almost immediately asked for a therapist. But it was fairly easy to find one. There's a hospital called Apollo, which was like a walk away from my house.
Oh,
And we talked to like child psychiatrists there, and we also went to government hospitals and talked to OCD specialists there as well. It was fairly easy to reach
and
out to people.
is the what so that's really promising to know that there were people who knew about OCD, you know, could help you with it, because there are a lot of places and a lot of people that we talk to. A common question I see on a lot of the forums that we follow are like, I can't find a therapist, or my therapist doesn't even know what exposure is, or doesn't even know about CBT, and it's hard to find that person who understands or can at least talk about OCD in an intelligent way. So it's great to hear that like you were able to find people to talk to. And so talk about, I guess, the therapy and how that worked for you, and how kind of your journey into recovery.
I first was focusing on my obsessive thoughts and how horrible I thought they were. And I was thinking that there was something wrong with me initially with therapy, but then I gradually came to realize it was just OCD. And I largely did a lot of cognitive behavioral exercises with it. Like I wrote bad thoughts down, then I like kind of stored them in a diary, but that didn't kind of work for me. Then I tried to do ERP, but it was very stressful. So I kind of didn't really, I didn't continue with that. What really worked for me was postponing compulsions. Like in the night when, say, I wanted to do a ritual of going outside the door, I used to say, I'm going to postpone this by 10 minutes. And I would wait for 10 minutes. I would kind of like trust my parents to wake me up after 10 minutes. They told me that I'll wake you up after 10 minutes, don't worry. And then I would fall asleep and they won't wake me up, basically. So then that kept on happening. And I realized that if I didn't do a ritual, nothing bad would happen, because nothing bad had happened. And that was mostly what I did.
So you were, you know, you know, I know that you said ERP was hard, but you're kind of in your own way.
Yeah,
That's what you were
kind
doing.
of ERP. It was kind of ERP,
You were,
but I didn't. It was more of a combination of it and postponing, because direct ERP, just stopping yourself from doing the compulsions, was like really, really difficult, and it was really stressful.
but you were kind of retraining your brain, and you know, something you said, which is so key in, you know, a lot of people when they talk about kind of turning the corner and starting to feel like they have more control, is just understanding that, wait, the thing that I feared didn't happen. And once you start to realize that, you know, OCD is lying to you, and I like this talk about OCD as a thing, like a person, or, you
Yeah.
know, something that you can like visualize. Like when you realize it's lying to you and not doing the other thing won't happen, or maybe you don't have control of that, you know, you're able to kind of fight it a little stronger. When
Yeah,
you
exactly.
first like said, okay, I'm going to wait 10 minutes, and your parents didn't wake you up, did that anger you? Did it get worse before it got better, or were you able to at a space to go, okay, you know, it kind of propelled you?
It kind of angered me and freaked me out at first. Like I was wondering, what's going to happen now? But I kind of once I kind of forget about a compulsion, my OCD moves very quickly from one thing to another once I'm not able to do a particular compulsion. So I kind of refocused on something else, and that kind of continued and continued until I realized that nothing was happening. And I kept on applying that same logic to whenever I got a compulsive urge.
That's great. Danica, thank you so much for your comment. I feel the same way. I'm always learning, which is one of my favorite things about, like, selfishly why I like doing this, is because I'm learning from people who are, you know, self-taught experts, and understand how OCD works for them and how they were able to get over it. How did the therapists help you in either creating a plan for you, or helping you understand, you know, what OCD really was? How did kind of therapy work for you?
So first, she kind of made me realize that my intrusive thoughts, which I thought were so horrible, they were not as bad as I thought they were, and kind of removing the importance of those thoughts. And she also told me about how many other OCD patients are there who have thoughts similar to mine. Like I thought that I was kind of alone in this, right? That I was the only one. I was kind of like a freak who had these kinds of thoughts, and that really helped me in realizing that I'm not that different from other people. I'm not I'm not like alienated. I'm not alienated from other people in that way. And she also told me a lot of different cognitive behavioral techniques. She also taught me about the postponing thing, and she also told me a bit about ERP. But we've mostly focused on CBT and making a diary, which I had a bit of trouble with.
Right. I mean, I think what's cool too is that you found what works for you. There are some people who CBT is hard because you start getting into your thought of your brain, and you can get wrapped up in the science of everything. And then so the physical work, the physical action makes sense. For you, it helped you kind of rationalize, understand
Yeah,
how OCD
exactly.
was affecting you. So I have a question. What age did you start therapy?
13.
So immediately, like right after, because you were saying you were around 13, so OCD kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
it affected you, and it ramped up pretty quickly in your life where your family and
yeah,
friends noticed
definitely.
it.
It was like 0 to like 90 in like a couple of days. I'm not
Um,
sure what happened. What was the trigger for that?
and did it affect you in school at all? Like either with schoolwork, or were you doing rituals in school?
Like I did a few rituals in school, especially towards the end of the day when I was a bit more tired, but I tried not to engage in them because I was afraid of what people would think of me. And in schoolwork, it did affect my grades slightly, but but some part of my OCD was also in relation to studies. Like I used to have to repeat notes again and again and again, and so my grades fell just like a bit, and teachers were slightly confused by those kind of crumpled up notes. And sometimes I used to give in wrong homework assignments. But it didn't really affect my schoolwork too much, and my friends didn't really notice.
So the fact that you were trying to control so much what you were doing in school, did it make when the second you got home, like everything came out, you had to kind
Yeah,
of
exactly. That my mom noticed that. I actually told her that I dreaded the bus ride home because I used to just think about everything that I hadn't done in the school day, and I was just freaking out, and I became really sad when I got home. She noticed that.
my daughter had similar things, um, where we always felt that we got the second she was done with what was done with school and she could come home and like decompress, it all came out, because
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
trying so hard, focusing, learning, dealing with your friend interactions or whatever schoolwork required of you, and the additions of like, oh my gosh, what did that person just say, what happened in science class, why are they talking about that thing that could kill me.
I
um,
know. Yeah, exactly.
it can get worse. Um, so I would love to kind of talk about um, how you started therapy at 13. You're now 17.
Yeah, I'm
So,
17.
so 4 years. How long do you think it would take? You gonna kind of took you to kind of get OCD in a better place, and then kind of how did that, when you were talking before about the kind of setting your brain a little bit more, was it like a year or two, it was a gradual process, did it happen immediately?
So a lot of my OCD was founded upon logic, right? So I remember the day when my OCD became really bad, June 13th, 2015. And I don't remember the day in which I actually managed to stop doing my compulsive urges. It took around 2 years. I'm pretty sure I noticed. My mom told me that um, almost immediately after I started 10th grade, I was able to like say, okay, OCD, you have to stop now. Uh, and I was able to focus more on other things, uh, and kind of realized that OCD is not that my thoughts are not as important as I used to think they were, and I employed a lot of different techniques like postponing then, and now I still get these kind of compulsive urges at times, and sometimes it's really difficult not to give in, but I most often I do manage to resist them.
That's great. I mean, you have learned how to kind of realize, I guess, what thoughts are junk and what thoughts are, fine, and or sit with the thought and go, thank you, see you later. Or, and if it gets stuck, then it's okay, wait a minute. Why am I thinking about that? Okay, no, this is OCD. I got to get rid of it.
Yeah, I have to be on the lookout for path patterns which are similar to that of OCD. Like if I see something wrong and I think some thought, and then I'm like, no, I need to repeat that. Then I'm like, oh no, that's just OCD. I have to not give in to that. So that's kind of what that's kind of my thought process right now whenever that kind of an urge comes.
Yeah. Thanks for the comment, Stacy. The junk. Well, one of the first things, and I just remember that out of the blue. But when Kaajal was talking about how OCD was described to her, I just remember one of the first things that was described to my wife and I, and also my daughter, was the idea of OCD is like it's spam in your inbox. It should be if it comes in, you got to throw it away, or it gets stuck in a net. So that was one of the ways it helped us visualize how the thoughts get stuck in your brain, or the idea of skipping a record and going back and forth. So feel free to keep commenting, folks. This is really fun. We're going to get into something, your passion project, something that was really cool that kind of helped us first, me notice what you guys were doing. Let's talk about the app you created, Liberate, My OCD Fighter. What inspired it, and what does it do?
So I started creating it around, I had the idea, my sister actually gave me the idea for it around 2 years ago. I was like still kind of in my OCD kind of compulsions phase, in which I kept on washing my hands mostly at that time. And she suggested that I make a diary documenting my thoughts and documenting the number of compulsions I did in a day, and those kinds of things, because I had tried to do that with the diary as my therapist had suggested, but it did not work well because of the lack of privacy, and my diary wasn't available with me whenever I was doing compulsion, and I didn't really feel like going and opening my diary in the middle of a compulsion too. So she suggested that I make an app for that, because having it on the phone would be way easier, as your phone's always with you, and you can just easily add a compulsion and keep track, and add diary entries and those kinds of things, and that would be like a far easier kind of self-help CBT diary. So I began approaching therapists and connecting to people, and around in May 2018 last year, I began working on it. And at first I didn't really have a clear idea of it in my head, but as I began doing research on OCD, and that was kind of difficult for me still, online and with books, I began to get a clear idea of what I wanted to include and what would have helped me.
So it almost became, in some ways, it was a way to beat OCD too, because you had resisted doing the research yourself. So this kind of forced you to confront something, which is fantastic. And you mentioned, the therapist that you reached out to as kind of like, the board of directors or the expert guides that would at least tell you kind of what's important to talk about.
I did talk to her during the initial stages, but later on I worked with a few other professors from another mental health institute in Bangalore for the review of the content of the app, since I had already created a lot for it, and making sure the exercises were good. I had also compiled a lot of tips for the exercises, which I thought would have helped me, and they reviewed all of that stuff.
And you got all your friends together, and everybody started to create cool little graphics and visuals. So What is the app is available on the Android Play Store now, right?
Yeah, we're
So
working on the iOS version.
awesome. So we will put the links to the website and the Google Play Store so you can check it out now. But you guys are on Instagram, Facebook, so you can learn more. So somebody downloads the app. What are they going to be able to do?
So there are a lot of different features in the app. That include the keeping track of compulsions, adding obsessions and compulsions, keeping diary entries, adding goals, short-term, long-term, those kinds of things. Then there are also exercises for like postponing compulsions, slowing them down, shortening them. Then there's also a fear ladder, which has a bunch of different exercises and tips. And there are thought exercises, cognitive behavioral exercises as well. Then the user can keep track of their compulsions and their emotional states and how it varies from different parts of the day. Mine would be really bad during the night, that kind of thing. And then they can also connect the app with their therapist, and their therapist can get weekly reports on that. And there are a bunch of other exercises on the app.
So you can actually share this information with your therapist, and they can. So is it through like an email, or they can download and you both have access to your journal, so to speak?
It's a weekly report through email.
Oh.
We may launch a real-time app, which is beside the current Liberate app, where I actually have a version of that in beta, and I'll see when I'm going to be releasing it.
Lee, the app, Liberate, my OCD Fighter, is right now only available on Android, but the iOS is in development. So, do you guys have a mailing list so people can sign up? So when it is available, they'll be able to know. I know you can follow them on Facebook, you can follow them on Instagram, so I'm sure that'll be announced there. One of the things that I love about the app is the illustrations and kind of how playful and welcoming it is. I think the choice to use the animation. So how did your friends help, and how did all that stuff come together?
So I began reaching out to people who I knew were good at art and digital and content creation, those kinds of things. And they connected me to other people as well. And we began forming kind of like an artist team of around 7 people from India, USA, and Turkey. And I didn't know a lot of them actually there, but we all collaborated online, and we got like 2 head artists to delegate work to all of them, and it was a really fun process actually. And we also got 2 writers to help edit the content of the app, since there's a lot of information.
So it's a truly international project. How did you reach out and find people? Just through like forums or Instagram, or?
It's mostly just Instagram. Like people just put it on their stories that we were looking for a graphic artist, and a lot of people were willing to help with that, since it's a very good cause.
Oh, that's great. And that was one of the things I thought was interesting when I was looking at the site. There was actually your UX designer is in Brooklyn, or was going to Pratt.
Yeah, one of them is, yeah.
So, and had you known her before that, or is she another connection that you found?
I did know her before that. She was a friend of a friend.
Very cool. And how did, I'm going to go a little tech side for a minute, but getting involved in kind of doing the coding and, releasing it on the store, making sure that everything kind of worked. How long did that take? From, you said you started it like almost May last year. When did it launch? And, what was the production process like?
I did the entire development of the app on my own on Android Studio, coding in Java and XML. And I just I collaborated with the artists and told them what to do, what kind of stuff I wanted. They gave me ideas, those kinds of things. Then I took a lot of help from my friends as well as to what content I should include, what screens look better, and like the overall UI UX of the app. And I also sent it to a lot of people, of some of them whom have OCD. I'm not going to mention names, but they did test the app out and give me advice on it around in September. And I kept on and on updating it and fixing bugs for a long time, actually. Since my school had just started and I wasn't able to dedicate as much of time to it. But then finally in November, we released the actual version.
And it's is there a cost to it? Is it free and then premium, or how does that work?
It's completely free because I realize that a lot of people aren't able to afford therapy, and I wanted to kind of make that known that that these kind of resources should be available freely and easily, mostly.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, folks, the app is free. So, when you download it, you can really put it right to use. Question from Danica: did you find creating the app and also kind of working with kind of an international group of helpers? Do you find it therapeutic at all?
Creating the app was definitely therapeutic because I learned a lot of different ways to fight OCD, and it still helps me to this day because I learned all those different exercises like worry time, which I hadn't even known about before. And I also learned about why OCD should be resisted and why. And we also created like a kind of intro to the app with the analogy of the ghost. And I still sometimes use that whenever I get a compulsive urge. I realize that it's just a ghost. It's like it's a phantom kind of. It has no actual substance to it. And working with the team was also like I educated them a lot about what OCD was because they were kind of like unsure of what it exactly it was. They were like, I also have OCD because like I like everything to be like in color coded and like rainbow colors or whatever. But I told them a lot about what that was, and they also began to share it with their friends. So that was really nice.
That's great. So you're educating people. I mean, so often one of the frustrations a lot of people with OCD or that have come in contact with have is just how people just assume it's a good thing, or I can have a mild touch of it and it's fine. And
Mm-hmm.
the thing your first instinct is to start like screaming at them and be like, you have no idea. But then most people don't do that, and they actually, oh, this is a chance to educate somebody or talk to them about it and find out what they really know, and then in your case, you're kind of sharing the app to say, hey, check this out. This is what we can do. And the ghost analogy is something I think a question that I was going to ask you earlier, I just forgot about. When you were going through therapy, did you name your OCD? Did you have things that kind of created as something that you had that helped you visualize it easier?
I did have a visualization of it as like a kind of a dot. I think I don't really remember it very well, but it was like this kind of dot, which was like holding on to my hand and preventing me from moving forward and becoming heavier and heavier whenever I give in to a compulsive urge.
Colleen, thank you for the comment, by the way. I'm glad you're fighting it. Yeah, it's a tough thing every day to kind of deal with it. And some days you are stronger than others, but it's the kind of everyday vigilance, I think, that helps in the end. The ghost analogy, I think, is interesting because it is this kind of like thing that you feel is real but really isn't. And can you blow it away? Can you make it go away?
Mm-hmm.
So what has been? I'm curious to see what the feedback was. Initially, you did some kind of like initial UX testing and the app testing to find out how people with OCD would use it. What were people telling you was useful and kind of most helpful?
I got a lot of reviews from people who talked about different aspects of the app. So I couldn't really pinpoint what was the most useful because some people talked about how the reminders were helpful. Some people talked about how worry time was helpful. Some people talked about the fear ladder. So I couldn't really pinpoint what exactly was the most helpful because I think therapy, what works for people, differs. So uh, I couldn't really like pinpoint that, and so I decided to just include all of those exercises in the app. But I got a lot of positive feedback on it.
That's fantastic. Question from Michelle about what kind of age do you think the app is good for? Do you think it'd be good for young children, or what would you the like kind of recommended ages?
It is. I think it would be good for young children as well because I mean I wouldn't want to like 18 from using it because like I'm under the age of 18. And it has like a very friendly design. It has easy to understand content, and I mean, OCD shouldn't be something which is not age appropriate, because anyone can have OCD, and there's no specific age bracket for people who should use the app.
I mean, that's great. You can always try. Is there an onboarding, in the sense that, like, I downloaded it and I'm kind of walked through what the features are and, which ones I might be able to use immediately or work up to? Like, is there is there like train, you kind of introducing people to different pieces of the app so they understand how to use it correctly when they first download it?
As of now, there is no kind of tutorial when you walk through the app, but we are working on creating a series of videos which show the different features of the app. But there is like a kind of an introductory slideshow to OCD on the app, like explaining what exactly it is, then explaining the analogy as well. And it's then there are a couple of other things which are there in the introduction, like you can add your obsessions first, your compulsions. Then you can also take a test to see the severity of your OCD. But right now there's no tutorial going through the exercises of the app itself. But I think it's fairly easy to find within the framework of the app.
Yeah, so I think, Michelle, just to follow up on your question, I think one, you just heard that there kind of is an introduction to OCD, and they use this kind of friendly ghost analogy. There's really cute illustrations. I think it's very welcome and not scary. So in that sense, it might be a great introduction for a younger child, what OCD is, to explain it. And then you can try pieces of the app out to see, if it's connecting and your son or daughter feels like this is something that can help them. But if not, it might be a good tool for you to use to write things down, to categorize or journal what's happening, because as a parent you're kind of watching and you're brought into it as well, and it might be something you can share with your therapist, because there are times a lot where kids don't share everything that's going on, and so this could be a good tool for a parent to kind of use and track in a different way than the app was created for. But you have this journaling feature, you have the reminders, and it could give you tips too as a parent. Maureen, Kaajal is 17. She had OCD, kind of first noticing it when she was 13. So we're kind of talking about a 4-year journey from OCD being really bad, 2 years to kind of feeling like you were in control, and then about a year ago starting this production on an app called My OCD Fighter. So it's been a really cool journey, and I love to see somebody who kind of understands it was bad, and now I want to give back because I want to help people and realize that this is not something you have to deal with alone, which you talked about earlier. You felt alone. When you were going through therapy, did you ever meet somebody with OCD, or, first realize that, hey, I'm not alone and this is something that is just this is my version of my thing, but everybody has their own thing, or, that feeling of acceptance or community? Was there any point in your journey where you were able to meet people or connect and realize, hey, this is not just me?
I did not get the opportunity to connect to other people with OCD, mostly because there wouldn't be kind of OCD support groups in Indian hospitals, as far as I know. And I did some research on them, but they were mostly composed of adults, and I was 13 at the time. So I did not get the opportunity to meet people with OCD, but I did connect to them online a lot.
Well, it's just great because you're able to at least, you don't have to have it one-on-one or meet at a coffee shop. It's, it's here online, and you're able to see, wait a minute, you just can search a hashtag on Instagram and suddenly you feel like you're able to kind of follow 1,000 people because they're all talking about it. So I just wanted to say, Sophie, thank you so much for sharing this all over the groups in the UK. We love all the stuff that's going on with OCD Action, so I really appreciate it. And we got a couple questions, so we'll deal with that. One question about, let me find it, was about siblings. Because you had your sister, she was a big impact on you finding out about OCD and dealing with it. Has your sister used the app? Do you think, at least educationally, siblings could find benefit in using My OCD Fighter?
I had already talked to her a lot about OCD and about the app as well. So I'm sure she has downloaded the app and looked through it, but I'm not sure if she's used it. but there are some resources on the app which could be used for siblings to understand, family members to understand about OCDs, particularly like our resources, our knowledge section, and the introduction to OCD, which I personally wrote.
So Michelle, I think that could be super helpful. I will also throw in a plug. We have a sibling page on our site with some videos. We also did a sibling Kids Speak Out about a year ago with Zach and Matt. So you can check that out on our YouTube channel. Just kind of we have some tips to get siblings involved, because they are impacted in their own way. Siblings need their own voice in a lot of cases, especially if they're a trigger, and how they can deal with OCD in their own way and be explained to. Another resource I would suggest, Michelle, is John Hirschfeld's book, When a Family Member Has OCD. He actually has a few pages about siblings specifically, so that's another resource I would recommend. Yeah, thanks, Danica. The app is fantastic. Okay. Oh, Colleen, yeah, the eating disorders do kind of sometimes go hand in hand with OCD. I believe, it is a type of OCD, having eating challenges, because there is a compulsiveness about it. And my friend Kim Quinlan, I think that was her entry into OCD and OCD therapy, was dealing with eating disorder issues. And I'm glad music has helped too. Is there anything that kind of helped you? Colleen brings up an interesting point. Kind of help your anxiety or allow you to kind of give your own free time, like, hobbies that you were able to kind of either manage your anxiety with, or things that allowed you to kind of just take a deep breath during either when things are hard or even now?
I think that during that time, programming was really helpful for me. Like I learned a lot on, like I started programming when I was around in 6th grade, but I still continued into all of my middle school and high school years. And I learned a bunch of different languages, and I really loved like applying logic in a way which was different from what OCD was telling me to do. OCD didn't really come into play whenever I was doing programming. Like I didn't really think about it, because I was able to have this kind of clear-cut idea of what I should do, and I would just really loved laying out that kind of logical basis for seeing something which I had built by myself.
And it was, in some ways, it was a problem you had to solve.
Yeah, exactly.
And which is a good challenge. Everybody needs a challenge, and clearly it inspired you. What are the plans? You have said you're working on iOS. What are your kind of plans to kind of either refine or add additional features or whatever to the app?
I am actually doing research right now to add a certain component to the app that I should not be sharing yet, but it will be announced for the app very soon, which I think will be very helpful, because I've been discussing it with a few professors, and I've been working with a technology professor on it, and I'm really excited to unveil it. Then we are also looking to get on a formal board of advisors to keep on updating the app with the best techniques for OCD. There is currently kind of an informal board, but I want to make it more universal, a more global board, which would be able to advise me on the different aspects of the app. Then we are also focused. We've also recently started kind of an OCD awareness campaign outside. While it does include the app in it, it also contains a lot of other stuff about education for OCD, particularly in India. We started this student ambassador campaign in which students can set up OCD awareness clubs in their school and conduct one activity per month on raising awareness for OCD, or conducting fundraisers for organizations, or having spoken word sessions on mental health. Then we've also recently started a video campaign for people of Indian origin, in which they talk about how OCD affected their lives. A lot of entries have been talking about how their academic life was affected, because a lot of people think that, particularly Indian people, think that OCD is just a quirk. or it's something which foreign people made up. But I want to show them that Indian people can also have OCD, and it is actually a debilitating disorder. Then we started a bunch of different things, and we are expanding our team. We have almost like more than 100 people working with us right now.
That's fantastic. I mean, the first thing you talked about, having that the licensed therapist, the degree, the medical component to help you out and advise you is key, because it adds validity to what you're doing. It was very important when we created Unstuck to actually have a film advisory board that had the experts on it that could say, you know, we wanted the voice to be the kids to speak from their own experience, but we needed the experts to say, like, yeah, that's medically correct. Okay, I get that. No, you can't, you know, you shouldn't say it this way. It's really important because you know, you don't have the degree. And so to get that, it helps you with just allowing more people to realize this is an expert tool. Yeah, Danica, she's fantastic. Yeah, I love hearing about all the, how it's expanding the group. Also in your country, it sounds like, you know, there's a lot you're doing from the ground up to kind of create awareness and bring OCD to awareness, either locally as well as in India, which is, I think, bigger country than America. So yeah, you not only do you have more people,
but are there.
More people, probably a larger landmass. So have you are you like dealing with local media? Is it all through digital technology to kind of get the word out? You know, how are you kind of spreading the word locally?
We have had a couple of interviews with news channels and TV stations as well. Yeah, we've gotten quite a bit of media attention in with the first media wave, kind of, which our one person on our team kind of planned. And now soon we're looking to repeat this and reach out to even more media channels, kind of like larger ones mostly, to reach out to more people and talk about what OCD is and our app and what we did. And right now it's mostly online. Like, I haven't met most of the members of my team because they're all over India. And well, we're like continually updating our Instagram page. We're trying to be regular with that. And we're just trying to reach out to as many people as possible, messaging on OCD support groups, those kinds of things.
It's one of those things you'll keep going and it'll start catching fire, and you know, through all the different, it's good that you have a lot of help so that you're not doing it yourself. Because it can get exhausting. You got to focus on the app and getting it done. And it sounds like you're good at delegating. So just to recap, guys, it's called Liberate, My OCD Fighter. It's available right now on the Android. iOS hopefully coming soon. There's information on their website. It's at myocdfighter.com. Yeah, and then that's your handle on Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah, that is.
So we'll put those in the comments when we're done. I want to wrap up with just a couple of, I like to ask, kind of, when you touched on it briefly, when you hear kind of somebody use OCD in the wrong way, or say like, oh, I'm so OCD about that, how do you approach them? You know, what's your advice for handling somebody who kind of, you know, needs to understand the truth?
Well, I am I don't get really angry with them, because I was one of those people who used to use OCD as an adjective. Because I didn't know any better. I didn't know that it was actually a really, really serious disorder. Like, I used to call my friends OCD when she wanted to arrange books on a bookshelf in a particular manner and height or something. Yeah, so and only after I was diagnosed with OCD, I realized, okay, no, that's wrong. I don't really I don't really become angry. I mostly just say that it's not OCD is not what you think it is. It's not an adjective. It's not being a perfectionist. It's actually a disorder that affects a lot of people around the world, and it is extremely debilitating, and it consists of large, and I just go into explain about what intrusive thoughts and how much anxiety is caused by them, because a lot of people can kind of relate to that at times, because as I've seen, whenever when I first joined my new school, a lot of people, in fact, like in the first month, I think I heard the term OCD being thrown around like 10 times. And they were very open to hearing more about OCD and how it's actually not what they think it is. So I think that you should mainly maintain a calm, like you should be calm and approach it in a kind of like composed manner instead of becoming kind of like really, really angry about it.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. You got to take it as a chance to kind of teach somebody, educate them.
Yeah, exactly.
I also realize that a lot of times when you do that, it's the start of a conversation. It's not necessarily a one and done, because when people understand or have a little bit of understanding about the breadth of it or what it really is, there's other questions that might come up. So understand if you're going to do that, it's a chance to start a dialogue as opposed to just a one-off conversation.
Exactly.
Now that you've kind of gone through that, you were talking before about how you're kind of recognizing OCD now, and you're taking steps to kind of be vigilant on. Do you find that it has helped you, going through this has helped you deal with other kids that you might know that might be going through some other different issues, or kind of allow you to be more compassionate with your friends, or how has it changed? How has having OCD and gone through this this therapy treatment has kind of changed you and helped you?
So before, I had kind of also considered therapy to be hocus pocus, and mental illnesses like anxiety and depression, they were like there, but people who got them were kind of like not like strong or something. But after I got depression as well as OCD, I realized that it's not what most people think it is. That I realized that I should those people, like there's so many people, especially like teenagers, who have depression and anxiety, and they're not very open about it. And whenever my friends now approach me and tell me about their own panic attacks or anxiety problems, or how they were having suicidal thoughts in the past year, I am able to approach the situation with far more empathy, because I can kind of understand where they're coming from, right? And just I'm able to also understand more about like the journeys of other people with their own mental health and those kinds of things, because not many people in India really kind of understand that. And whenever a friend kind of talks to me about it, you can already see like a kind of sliver of fear within them. Like they'd be like kind of worrying, oh my God, what's going to happen? What is she going to say? And yeah, I think that that's really helped me in communicating with other people. And OCD in general, now that I'm kind of happy that I'm not happy that I had it, but I am happy that I had the kind of experience of being able to kind of realize that my thoughts were not all that they were, and kind of become more mindful of my own self. And I think that was really helpful for me, even in things.
Yeah, no doubt. Allowing you to be more compassionate, aware with your friends. One thing that I think people will have to realize, when you do admit something that you're feeling that might be troubling to somebody else, you don't always have to tell them, the biggest, worst thing. You can start small and understand that, you'll get to the thing that you're comfortable sharing, and then you don't have to share it all, and kind of bring them along to it. So I wanted to ask if you have a piece of advice. Say somebody catches this down the line, or they're watching the replay, piece of advice that you might have for somebody who's kind of just getting into OCD now, not sure what it is, scared, in that place you were when you're 13. Any advice for parents or anybody with OCD?
I think the main thing that people with OCD, people with OCD need to realize that their thoughts are not as important as you think they are. That your thoughts don't mean anything about your personality. If you don't, your thoughts, thinking something does not make you all powerful. You can't change the world based on that. And your thoughts are not necessarily you, those kinds of intrusive thoughts, just OCD. That's the main thing which kind of helped me. It even still helps me now with realizing that my compulsive urges, like now when I get it, I get a compulsive urge. I'm just like, okay, that's just OCD. I should not do it. It's not my own thought. It doesn't mean anything about me. Yeah, that's the main thing that people should keep in mind.
Absolutely. Perspective and understanding, through therapy, you kind of can learn that, wait a minute, it's okay to have these thoughts, but, the fact that, they don't have to stick around, or I don't have to give them as much weight as I used to, and you mentioned one of the first things you thought was like magical thinking. And I always think of that too, when it comes to, some of the rituals that people do, to think that they're going to protect somebody. And, it sounds like the logical point of view for you was really helpful to go, wait a minute, just because, if I step in and out of a doorway, how does that really help somebody save somebody? How's it really working? So yes, thank you for your comments, everybody. I really appreciate it. This has been super enlightening for me to hear. I loved hearing about your story. I think we first connected via Instagram, and then I know when the app was out, we were aware of it, and then you were also nominated for the Youth Hero Award. So that's when I first realized, oh my God, this is awesome. Really getting into it. So this was definitely a goal of mine to get you on here to talk about the story and hear not only your story, but also the app story and how it's going to continue helping people, which is fantastic. So if you're listening to this on the replay, go check out my Liberate, my OCD Fighter. Hopefully by the time you listen to this, it'll be on iOS as well. And has anybody else reached out to you, either other OCD organizations to say, how can we help? Or, have you gotten any help from any of the people who are involved in OCD day to day? There are therapists that, people reaching out saying, hey, I want to help.
We have gotten a lot of people who are interested in our programs, but right now, not many. And right now we're engaged with around 2 organizations, which are similar teen-led mental health awareness organizations, but not too many especially OCD organizations have reached out to us. But I've seen a lot of individual people asking, how can we help? I really want to help with this. And we get engaged with our ambassador program, and or they come in as one of our interns and those kinds of things. And a lot of media pages have also reached out to us.
That's great. I just realized that there's a conference later this summer in the middle of August in New York called Anxiety Tech, where people are going to get together and talk about mental health and technology. So if you have some stuff that you can send me, I'd be happy to kind of give it away and share it there. Maybe next year we can get you on the stage, and I would love to. I'm going to plant an idea in your head for. I don't know if the West Coast of the U.S. would be easier to get to, or the East Coast. But next year, the OCD conference,
next year I'm going to be in US, so.
Oh, really? Awesome.
I'll be in college.
Where are you going to go?
I'm not sure yet. I'll be applying this year.
Oh, that's fantastic. So next year is, next summer we'll be in Seattle for the OCD conference, and the year after that will be New York City. So during your college years, if you can stick around, and usually in the middle of July, it would be great to kind of see you at one of these events. But in the meantime, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate this. And we will...
it was a pleasure being here.
Cool. And if you would, please, in the comments, just throw some of the links in there so people can, find your site and things like that.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Thank you so much. All right, thank you everybody for joining. Again, my name is Chris Bear, producer of Unstuck, an OCD Kids movie, as well as a digital OCD conference called OCD Construct. You can stream Unstuck anytime on our website, OCD Kids Movie, and you can watch the full replay of the OCD Construct conference at ocdconstruct.com. All that information is there. If you're going to the OCD conference in a few weeks, can't wait to see you, and thank you everybody for joining. Share this out, and if you're watching the replay, we will absolutely continue to comment anytime you're watching, so feel free to keep those comments coming. Thanks, great, and have a great day.